All right, here we go. New edition of Celtics Beat post NBA trade deadline, and what an active, fun trade deadline it was, folks. Whatever will we discuss? There's so much to cover, obviously, not only as it relates to the Boston Celtics and their three trades and all these wonderful trade player exceptions that they've created in the process, but obviously blockbusters around the NBA, most notably in the Eastern Conference between, of course, the Nets and the Sixers. We'll get to all of it here in the next little while. I am Adam Kaufman. We thank you for being with us. Evan Valenti, always part of the program, and back with us for the first time in, I don't know, a couple months, maybe not even. Ian Thomsen, good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you. How you doing?
Well, overwhelmed, I think, by what has gone on. So I'm gonna ramble for a second. I know that anyone who pays any attention to the Celtics knows everything I'm going to tell you over the next, minute, but I'm going to do it anyway in case there are any casuals out there. Of course, the C's winners of 6 straight, 8 of 9, 13-4 over the last month. They have been scorching hot, albeit against generally lesser competition, but they have been red hot, incredibly connected defensively. They've got the best defense in the entire NBA. They're blowing out bad teams, which is exactly what they should be doing. And it gave us a few-day little window into the trade deadline before picking up action as we sit here tonight against the Nuggets. And of course, Nick Jokic, the Joker. We'll see what comes to be. We'll see who's available for that game. But it gave Brad Stevens and company, the rest of that front office, Mike Zarin, Austin Age, everybody, a little bit of time to say, all right, what do we have here? Do we be buyers? Do we be sellers? Is this sustainable? What do we need to do? How do we build for now? How do we build for the future? And so on. Well, what they did, they went out and they made 3 trades. And just to give you I'm not going to go trade by trade, but the overall crux of what they did. In are Derrick White from San Antonio. Daniel Theis is back from Houston, a future second-round pick. They got under the luxury tax. They created 5 open roster spots, which, of course, a couple, at least one anyway, has been filled by Sam Hauser, who's technically on a 2-way deal. He's expected to get converted into a regular deal for the rest of the season, so that'll be another spot. And then another Luke Cornett is up from the main Celtics, so that leaves 3 spots available, maybe Denzel Valentine, maybe guys from the buyout market, maybe a DeAndre Bembry. We'll see what obviously ends up happening in the days, weeks, and months to come. Gone, however, Josh Richardson, Dennis Schroeder, mercilessly, Romeo Langford. They've given up the cause. Enes Kanter Freedom is taking his show elsewhere, and then we hardly knew ye of former Denver Nuggets. There was PJ Dozier, Bol, also Bruno Fernando is gone as well. A 2022 first-round pick for the C's, so they only have a second-rounder in the upcoming draft as things stand now, a future second-rounder, cash, and of course the 2028 pick swap with San Antonio. So that's all the in, all the out, notably because we joke about it all the time, but it's true. According to Adam Himmelsbach of the Boston Globe, C's have they used their roughly $10 million trade exemption that was created by the Tristan Thompson deal to acquire Daniel Theis that was set to expire this year, and created 5 new exceptions, 5 new TPEs. Get the custom TPE 99 jerseys on the Celtics website. Schroeder for $6 million, 4 others worth $2.5 million or less. And of course, they still have Evan Fournier's $17 million trade exception to use this summer. So the guards right now, just to tell you what the roster looks like, the guards, Marcus Smart, Derrick White, Peyton Pritchard, the forwards, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Grant Williams, Aaron Nesmith, and now Sam Hauser, who's back. And the bigs, Robert Williams, Al Horford, Daniel Theis, and Luke Cornett. Again, 3 open roster spots. So, Ian, we begin with you. We'll give our opinions after you. The biggest question that we should be asking ourselves is, are the Celtics a better team right now than they were right before the trade deadline?
They should be better. They definitely should be better. And honestly, we still don't know how good they are. They've had 7 different personalities this season. And lately, as you pointed out, Adam, they've been cleaning up as they should, but just about every opponent has been either bad or depleted. So the good news on that is, they have not been playing down to the level of their opponent, which was their identity before. Mm-hmm. Are they going to play up? How are they going to do in this stretch now of Atlanta and Philly and some of Denver? I think some of the teams that are coming up, they're really going to be challenges. I think they're going to be good because they've been doing it with defense. They're already strong with defense, and they added one of the best backcourt defenders in the league, a guy that's from the Popovich school of guarding your guy and sharing the ball, and a guy that has something to prove. He's just entering his peak years, and he lost control of the ball to DeJounte Murray, as he should have. But now he's coming to a coach that really knows him, and it's going to hasten the integration. And there's a need for him, especially if he comes off the bench, which I'm thinking he will, to run that second unit. And he's part of a team on the rise that's suddenly finding its footing, and the vibe is going to be a lot better for him coming in than it would have been a month ago. I just look at all of it, and then adding Daniel Theis, who already knows what it's about, and, fits in very well with his skills, especially his ability to go out to the 3-point line the way Al Horford does. So, in the bottom line of this, in my opinion, do they have as much star power as some of these other teams? They don't. But if they're playing defense going into the playoffs, and they just added 2 guys that are going to add to that, playing that high level defense gives you a chance in every series and allows you to maybe make up for the deficiency in firepower and star power. And it gives them an identity which the people of Boston have been craving for, because everybody hates this team until the last couple of weeks. So if they're playing defense and they're bringing back memories of, the Celtics when they've been great and they've stood for something and you knew who they were and you could trust them, then you put all that together and this trade makes them better.
There's no question that the guys that, of all the guys to come in, all the guys to go out that I rattled off before, Derrick White is the best player. The Celtics got the best player here of again, what they had to give up, and there's, to some degree, I'm not going to say they drastically overpaid for him, but, I do appreciate Brad Stevens identified a guy that he wanted, or whoever around him wanted as well. And he went out and he paid the price. There was none of the, it's the running joke annually with Danny Ainge when he was the president of basketball operations, is, well, there were a lot of things out there and, we came close on a lot of things and didn't quite happen. There was none of that. Brad Stevens made 3 deals. He had goals in mind, obviously. Get rid of Dennis Schroeder, get under the luxury tax and remodel your bench, basically. And they did that in the form of guys that, are going to be around, at least, barring trades in the offseason. They're under term for a good little while. Derrick White has another 3.5 years on his contract. Daniel Theis has multiple years left on his contract. We'll talk about salary matching and things like that in a little bit. They've acquired, I think, some good tradable contracts as it relates to being able to be active in the offseason. You mentioned his familiarity, obviously, with head coach Ime Udoka. Played under him. I know he was an assistant in San Antonio under Greg Popovich, but played under Udoka, worked with Udoka for a couple of years there, his first couple of years in the league. Will Hardy, who obviously is an assistant on the Celtics staff now, was in San Antonio prior, so he worked with him for 4 years there. There's, the chemistry, having played with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart in 2019 at the FIBA Select Camp. So there's certainly a fit. Brad Stevens earlier today talked about all the different reasons that he wanted to bring him in as a high character guy, makes all the right decisions offensively with the ball, or without the ball for that matter, an excellent defender. Like you said, he's one of the better backcourt defenders in the entire NBA. How important from a chemistry standpoint, the familiarity with all those guys that I already mentioned, how much did that factor in, do you think, to this acquisition?
Oh, everything. I mean, if they want to be the East Coast Spurs, right? And we know how big a fan Brad is, and how they feel about Popovich, and Udoka is from that school, and was clearly trying to emphasize defense and ball sharing the whole time. And most of the time, it was just driving everybody crazy watching it not happen until they got all the key players on the court together to do it. I think chemistry means everything to this. And it's an important deal because of all they gave up. I mean, this idea of swapping picks years down the road,
Mhm.
That could be a Brooklyn Nets kind of thing come to backfire on the Celtics, for all we know. No, there's no way to predict what the circumstances are going to be like at that time. So I really come away from this thinking about a rookie GM, if that's what Brad's title is, president, whatever it is, but he's GM. Having goals going into a trading deadline. And as you point out, Adam, we've seen how difficult the trading deadline can be for a guy like Danny Ainge to navigate and for him to pull it all off. And basically, we can look at this and say that this really makes sense. This, especially this move for Derrick White, it really makes sense. The move for Daniel Theis, it makes sense. And to manage the financial implications of it, and to get rid of pieces that weren't really helping them. I mean, Dennis Schroeder wasn't helping them on the court, and this Cantor Freedom was hurting them off the court. As far as their revenues in China.
And on the court. Let's get to this.
Well, yeah, I mean, for what little bit he was doing for them on the court, but I mean, the NBA is selling its soul to do business in China, and so good luck to Ennis being picked up by another team in future for standing up for what he believes in, But when you put all of that together, and the guy that's in his first year on the job pulled it off. So congratulations to him. Did he give up more than Danny would have given up? Probably. Would Danny have given up so much for Derrick White?
I don't think the deal would have happened, to be honest.
Probably not. And also, both guys that are running the Celtics right now, they have huge deference to Greg Popovich. I mean, they just so that was a great negotiation for him. But I'm not standing here right now and saying that the Celtics got robbed, because they have this window, and it looked for much of this year like they were blowing it, where they have to convince these two young guys over the next couple of years that this is where they want to be for the rest of their careers, and there's growing something, and it's going to lead to something, and to get them to believe in it. And so to make trades like this, especially the Derrick White one, that might contribute to that and keep the momentum going, and get them to really believe, especially Jason Tatum, that Boston is the place. And don't listen to all your fellow NBA stars trying to recruit you elsewhere. You try to recruit them here. To get all that trying to get going, that's a huge thing right now. And so if you had to overpay a little bit to contribute to that plan, then so be it.
I just want to mention, because we haven't and should, that Josh Richardson, within his role of how the Celtics used him, what they wanted from him, especially coming off the down year that he did last year before he was a Celtic, he was excellent. He's not a guy that, you necessarily wanted to part with. Far from untouchable, don't get me wrong. He's obviously a guy you were willing to part with, but it was all right. What are we going to get in return? And obviously, they got a superior player. There's no question Derrick White is a superior player to Josh Richardson, but Josh Richardson was having a very, very good year defensively. His fit, popularity in the room, on the floor, shooting, obviously, and I think Derrick White is going to find success turning his luck around in terms of how he shot the ball once he's playing with a couple of guys like Tatum and Brown as well. He'll find some of that similar success to what White or what Richardson did. But just we don't have the time, but we could go on and on appreciating what Josh Richardson did in his very limited time in helping to put this team, where it is among the top in the league defensively. He had a real role in that, and so it'll be interesting, obviously, to see how specifically he is replaced. Because obviously he's a wing versus White being a guard, and so obviously White steps in more so for Schroeder. He's going to have some different defensive responsibilities to replicate that of Richardson. Aaron Nesmith's a guy who's going to get an opportunity, but I wanted to put all that out there. Evan, same thing I initially asked of Ian. Do you, especially now that you've been in the lab all night studying all things Derrick White, are the Celtics better today than they were at the going into the trade deadline?
I think they've, as Ian said earlier, they've kind of leaned into their identity a little bit more. I think they decided that, we really, again, ball movement and defense is really going to be our calling card. And it's really shown its true colors the past couple of weeks. It's been wonderful to watch. But think about the two of the three guys they got rid of in terms of how that helps them lean more into that. Getting rid of Dennis Schroeder, who, I had gone to the table for and been to the table for throughout the year for certain reasons, but there was an obvious fit problem with him and Smart on the floor at the same time. Ime got away from that a little bit more towards the end of it. But it wasn't a stylistic fit as easy as Derrick White will be, I think, as when we finally get to see him, catch up to speed and go rolling with his team. I think, Schroeder, not the best defender. It can guard guards okay, but Derrick White's a much more switchable defender that can guard up a lot easier than Dennis Schroeder can, moves the ball better than Dennis Schroeder can. And when you have, two guys in Jalen and Jason who, they're going to do the primary of your scoring. You don't really need a huge scorer. You need somebody that can score when the shot clock's down, but keep it moving and keep the process moving and keep the ball moving as much as they can to find a better shot, which has been really great over the past couple of weeks. So I think they upgrade there. The Cantor thing, you're going from a guy that wasn't playing in Enes Kanter or Enes Freedom until the end of the game to a guy that Theis who can come off the bench and actually give you good minutes as a backup center. And you won't have to worry about him in pick and roll coverages at all. He'll be a guy that can actually, close the gap on a shooter or at least stay with guys when they drive. So that's going to be very valuable there. The Richardson piece, yes, that's unfortunate. But, in Richardson, they were comfortable, according to reports, of when they traded Schroeder, they give Richardson the keys to be more of a point guard. Ime had talked before the season about getting Richardson more on the ball in terms of their offense and giving him the keys to the car, so to speak, at certain times. Well, you're going to have an easier time doing that with Derrick White because Derrick White's an actual point guard. They've upgraded, I think, a little bit, but what they did was lean more into their identity, which is defense. And if they're going to win games, they're going to win with their defense. And they clearly upgraded their at least two spots. Now, again, they're down a wing defender. We'll see with the buyout market, see what that brings and see what Boston does to finish out their roster. But I love the defense. The defense the past couple of games has been just hilarious to watch. I mean, I went back and looked at it. I believe the Celtics have held 4 of their past 5 opponents, regardless of whoever's playing and how banged up they are, or how depleted they are. Boston has held, I believe, 4 of the last 5 opponents before the Denver game tonight to under 40% shooting from the field, which is a really remarkable number considering at the end of games when they're up 20 and 25, they're playing their bench and the defense isn't nearly as good. So if you let their starting unit and their 8-man rotation play the entire game, that number would be closer to 35% than would be to 40. So they get 2 guys that can defend. They can space the floor a little bit, but the defense is the big thing. The ball movement's the big thing, and they lean more into that, which I love. Are they going to be a team that contends for the title? We'll see. We'll see how the chemistry mixes together because, that's a big deal at this point. And the fact that they have familiarity with these guys is big. But I'm not expecting a title this year. I'm not. And I'm really curious in the offseason now with some of these contracts. But from a talent perspective right now, they are either just as good or slightly better, but they lean in their identity a little bit more, which I think will make them better just in the aggregate.
Ideally, if you're Brad Stevens, how are you looking to build out this roster? Because we've seen multiple teams do it different ways, obviously. And, you've got your what we believe to be the core of Tatum and Brown, Smart, Williams, White seemingly is going to be part of that as well. At least you hope. And, how much are we going to see kind of a shift in terms of do we add more like the Whites, the Theises of the world, some of the other guys, Smart, Williams, more of the high leverage guys, really, really solid within their own roles to build around your stars versus, again, like we've been talking about for years, going out and getting the third star. I think one thing that Brad and company did, which is very valuable, you look at these future salaries in terms of offseason matching. Again, you've got the traded player exceptions and the different rules that those come with. But beyond that, Al Horford obviously is going to be a movable contract in the offseason. Derrick White, if you're ultimately making a choice between Derrick White and Marcus Smart and not both, they're both making right around $16-17 million next year. Theis is almost $9 million. It's a movable deal. Robert Williams, I know nobody wants to move him, but he's right around $11 million. You could look at obviously sub 5 for Nesmith, Pritchard, and Grant Williams as well. But this is something they haven't really, what I'm boiling down to is this is something they haven't really had a lot of in recent years in terms of having a whole bunch of contracts that are kind of in that mid salary range. It's not the for a while it was, you got guys making 30 plus million, you got guys making less than 10. Now they've got a bunch of guys that are in the teens, that are around 20, deals that they could look to move, easily match, and trying to bring in another bona fide superstar this offseason if they elect to go that route. So, what did you think of just strategically setting yourself up, how Brad and the rest of that front office has done here, and what the plan might be?
I mean, I think they're in much better shape now than we ever would have predicted months ago. There would be more cause for optimism now than they ever gave anybody reason to have until the last few weeks. But as far as trading for a third star, when you look at most of these trades, if you're not trading a star, then I think you have to have draft picks to try to pull that off. You have to offer, because the team, most of the time, trading the stars is in some kind of rebuilding phase, or else they're trading a star wanting to get back a star. But as Philly was when they traded Simmons for Harden. But if you don't have that package of draft picks, I just don't think it's realistic for you to be thinking you could take Marcus Smart and Al Horford or whatever. You package those guys together, and where's that going to put the team giving up the stars? Is that going to help them rebuild after they've given up one of their best players? It won't. And will it help them perform as well? Because they're getting, the team that wins the trade is the team that gets the best player. So that doesn't help them either. So I don't know that they're in that great a position to go out and get it. I was kind of, for their sake, I thought it was good that they held on to Aaron Nesmith, because I know he's had trouble getting on the court and he's had trouble adapting to the new system. But the guy's a shooter who defends, and he's got, a bit of athleticism to him and the size on the perimeter. And so if there's a guy with upside now to develop, it's him to me. And if they, all things being equal, it's better for them that they gave up Romeo Langford than it is Aaron Nesmith. The other question for me going forward after getting Derrick White is, does he start? Does he displace this lineup that's looking so good, or do you bring him off the bench? And I'm very much in favor of them bringing him off the bench and having a second unit of leadership and giving. This is a guy that must have seen himself as the future point guard of the Spurs and lost that role. Was still handling the ball a lot, had a lot of assists this year as the secondary ball handler, but let him come in and have some moments of leadership with a second unit, and give yourself 48 full minutes now where you don't expect to drop off, but where you actually have a second commander there. And then he finishes the game, depending on lineups and everything, but he's out there at the end of the game when it really matters. And coming from the Spurs system, if there's a guy coming in that's going to be willing to come off the bench, you would think would be him. So I just like that idea of them having a rotation now that's kind of blended throughout. When Hayward first came to the Celtics, and when he was able to play with them, he really was more of a facilitator, more of kind of what we're expecting Derrick White to be, right? A guy that can score, but also blends everybody together, a little bit like what Al Horford brings. And so to add another guy like that, a poor man's Hayward, I mean, very poor. He's not as tall. He's not an all-star. He doesn't score at that level or anything like. But bring those qualities to the team, I think, is really, really valuable.
I know you got to get out of here soon, but can't let you do that, obviously, without getting your thoughts on the biggest move of the day that didn't directly involve the Celtics. It impacted the Celtics, but it didn't involve the Celtics. And that is, of course, the blockbuster between the Nets and the Sixers, which multiple players, draft picks, all of that were involved. But at their core, it was James Harden for Ben Simmons, which is, I think really it's a win for both teams. It's a win for fans. It's a win for those two guys. It's a win for, sulking superstars who get whatever they want in this league all the time. What was your I don't think there was any surprise when it went down, other than maybe just the fact that it actually went down. But the rumors were there long enough, all season long, really. So the fact that it happened, what this does for these two teams, whether you think that one versus the other has a better chance of winning a championship now, what was the big takeaway?
Well, Philly has the better chance of winning the championship because they already have one of the best players in the league in Joel Embiid. And Harden was playing very badly, if he was playing at all, in recent weeks for Brooklyn. But that's also what he was doing for Houston. And no sooner did he get to Brooklyn, and all of a sudden people are saying, boy, this guy's an MVP. So I would think James Harden, who does not rely on great athleticism to score and has never been a great defender anyway, he should be able to get back to the way he was playing last year with Brooklyn and doing it for Philly and really giving Embiid the best complementary player he's ever had with them. I think that's a tremendous trade for Daryl Morey, who heard for months that he was ridiculous for holding out. He was never going to be able to turn Ben Simmons into a star, and he's turned him into an MVP who still has something to prove. I mean, Harden was the one guy in Brooklyn who hadn't won a championship, and it's clearly helped drive him out. He felt that they weren't going to be able to win with Durant always being injured and Kyrie never being able to play at home. And who knows much longer Kyrie's going to be an NBA player if he's going to retire all of a sudden. I mean, nothing's out of the question for him. So I understand Harden wanting to get out of there and try to win a championship because that's what he needs to get himself out of this rut. He's got a terrible reputation for underperforming in the playoffs and the big playoff games. And now he's going with a guy who's going to be bucking him up that way. And so we'll see how that goes in Philly. I really, really hope we get to see a Philly-Brooklyn playoff series, which would just be unbelievable. It'd be so much better for me than the Shaq Kobe rematches that used to happen every once in a while. This would be a real thing in the same conference, and then for Brooklyn, it's an upgrade because if you have a guy that's underperforming and doesn't want to play, and you add somebody as broken as Ben Simmons might have appeared to be, he's going to be very hungry to prove himself. And Kevin Durant is a great teammate on the court. And Kyrie's not so bad on the court. And I think playing with those two guys, and they're going to look at his deficiencies and be happy to have them. He doesn't need the ball. He doesn't want to take the big shot. Great, more for us. And we're arguably two of the best in the league at it, or the two best in the league at that, doing that. So for them to get an old breaking down team to get energy and defense and versatility and get a spark. There's no way of predicting how it's going to go, but it's an upgrade for them. And when you look at the East right now, I think there are 8 or 9 teams. I mean, Atlanta is right now 10th, but rising. All these teams are saying to themselves, let's give ourselves a chance. Let's be playing good basketball going into the playoffs, because no one knows, as fragile as the NBA is right now, no one knows what the opponent's going to look like. You don't know about COVID. You don't know about injuries. I mean, guys that used to play, sprained ankles that players used to play through are now 2 to 3 week injuries in the NBA. And you just don't know. You don't know what you're going to be going up against. And there are all these teams that have talent. Toronto has a lot of talent, young talent, unproven talent for the most part, but a lot of talent. So they're all looking, and the Celtics are in this group, they're all looking at the playoffs and saying, doesn't matter where our seed is, if we're playing well, if we're healthy, the other team might just fall apart right in front of us, and there might be openings here for us that we never would have expected in any other year. So I really think even a team like Brooklyn, as beat up as they look, as defeated as they look, they get Durant back and Ben Simmons is playing better. They're going to be thinking to themselves, nobody can beat us.
Just 2 things real quick. One, the Celtics odds, championship odds improved dramatically with their movement yesterday. So a lot of people, I'm not saying they're favorites by any stretch, but their odds, the odds makers gave them a sizable shift. The other thing, you were just talking about this obviously, but I don't, as a fan, as as a basketball fan, I get wanting, this playoff matchup, of course you want Sixers and Nets and let's see this shake out over a 7-game series. But I tell you what, as a Celtics fan who doesn't want either of those teams to even have a chance of winning a title, it is not out of the realm. In fact, it's not even all that unlikely for, the Nets right now are 2.5 games out of a playoff spot. They're, we're down to what, 25, 27 games left in the regular season for Brooklyn. Like you said, Kyrie Irving, who knows when he's available? I mean, he barely plays. Kevin Durant, don't know when he's going to come back. Ben Simmons, he's not remotely in basketball shape. He can't be, at least not game shape. And then the whole chemistry element of seeing what it looks like with those guys on the floor. Like Brooklyn could really miss the playoffs. They may not get out of the play-in tournament. They may not make the play-in tournament. They may not have enough time to put this together. And there's a part of me that, as much as that playoff series would be fun, I'd actually rather see them fall short.
No, dude, the ratings for like the 1-8 matchup.
I don't care about the ratings. That doesn't impact my life.
I am so excited for that possibility. I'm all for it. I'm hoping that, I'm praying to the basketball gods that it happens, because it's going to be a bloodbath for how many games it's going to be. It's going to be incredible. The vitriol on Twitter is going to be as toxic as ever. It's going to be incredible. I'm hopeful for it. I would.
Kyrie Irving playing in 2 or 3 games max.
Well, you have all the road games, and there are more road games than home games with the Nets at that point. So let's buckle up and rock and roll. I'm way into the fact that the Nets are actually tanking on purpose so that they can play more games on the road, because they need Kyrie more often than not. So I'm all into that. I'm way into this particular strategy or conspiracy theory, or whatever you want to call it. And the fact that it could line up to those two teams meet in the first round. You can't ask for any better content than that. You can't. It's not possible. It would be literally incredible. I would watch every game. It'd be appointment television every night. It'd be awesome.
We'll keep rapping for a minute or two here, but Ian, we'll let you jump out. We greatly appreciate you hopping on with us as always. We'll bug you
Ian
again
Thomsen.
in the near future.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot. A lot of fun.
Ian. Appreciate it.
All right, as always, Ian Thomsen. You can always, check him out on Twitter. Obviously, check him out whenever he's with us here on this show. He's always a great pleasure, and we appreciate him being on with us as always. So again, 6 games, seasonized 6-game winning streak, and 6 games over 500. You got Sunday afternoon before the Super Bowl against Atlanta in Philadelphia. I assume James Harden will be healthy and ready to go for that one. And then, of course, into next week, a game with Detroit. That's the next handful. And then Brooklyn, by the way, in Brooklyn. So no Kyrie Irving for that one on Thursday, the 24th. I'm sure you checked out, by the way, the LeBron and Durant picking their all-star teams, and just that chess match for LeBron.
That was high quality television. And
I loved, like, you knew what LeBron was doing.
Good on everybody.
What LeBron was doing going in. Like he said, like he had to have said to himself, I'm not picking James Harden. I'm going to make him pick James Harden. And it goes all the way to the very end. And God bless Kevin Durant. I've never liked Kevin Durant more than him with a straight face rationalizing needing size in an all-star game to pick Rudy Gobert over James Harden. And then, of course, like, insert Charles Barkley perfectly to just, amp that thing up to the next level. It was unbelievable.
Not the first time that's happened. It won't be the last time that's happened, where somebody doesn't pick somebody they're supposed to pick, like first or second, and they just let it go all the way to the end. LeBron leaned all the way into it. He was dying. Everybody. It was a great TV moment, man. And good on, Durant obviously was laughing about it, and it can't avoid the ginormous elephant in the room that was James Harden still being on the list. Mm-hmm. And it made for great television. But I didn't get to see. That's the only clip I got to see from it. I was curious what Durant said about Tatum just when they picked him, because I know he's on Team Durant.
Yeah, that I didn't catch. I only saw some of the clips.
No, the only thing that went viral was that one clip, so that's great. But this team right now, playing the way they're playing, and they really found their identity. Started January really, mm-hmm. And they're really playing well. And actually, it makes me kind of bummed out that the All-Star break is now, because they're playing so well and they're on such a great roll. You don't want to mess up that momentum, but at the same time, these guys need rest. Tatum especially needs rest, considering how much basketball he's played over the past 2 years. But I love the way his team's playing. It's just a much more cohesive unit. Mm-hmm. And what they did during the deadline, is make their team more cohesive. And like we didn't talk about this at all with Ian because Ian gave us the amount of time that he could, and we were very grateful for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I just looked into Derrick White just real quick. Again, I watched what I could and looked up some things and read some things. I found this very interesting that, Derrick White, we always talk about how great Derrick White is defensively. And I don't think we actually acknowledge how good he is defensively. So I went and found this. Derrick White, throughout his tenure this year on the Spurs, was second on the team in blocks, which is outrageous, 42, and steals with 49. Those numbers would be good for third on the Celtics, who block literally everything. Like, I don't know if people understand, like, Rob Williams is ridiculous. He has 99 blocks this year. Horford with 61 is at second. Derrick White at 6'4" would be third on the list, which is pretty unbelievable. Steals wise, the one thing that Boston does really well is as soon as the ball gets in the paint, they collapse on that particular ball handler, and they just pick a lot of pockets that way and make life very difficult for people on the inside. Derrick White's gonna be great at that too. He's great at stealing the basketball. This is, again, it's not a superstar move. It does give me a little question mark, as we talked about earlier, as a potential Marcus Smart move to get Bradley Beal. You can then, slide in Derrick White to that spot and not get the same production, but get something very similar. But this team is really found the identity, and Derrick White's going to fit this to a T, and it's really a perfect fit, much better than Schroeder. And as much as I enjoyed watching Schroeder from time to time, this is just a way better move. And I think it's interesting that Brad is currently getting all the credit for something that I think Mike Zarin had a lot to do with. I feel like Zarin is the guy pulling the strings behind a lot of this. And I have no evidence to back that up, other than the fact that there are 5 new TPEs as we sit here this afternoon that they didn't have prior. And it just seems to be like a Mike Zarin sort of thing, which I actually like. But I think trade-wise, Boston did as well as they possibly could. Sans trading for a superstar, traded for the perfect role player for them, who's well respected in the league and well respected by San Antonio. I just have questions about how it came about. Did Pop seek them out? Did Ime go to Brad? Did Brad, in his ridiculous basketball mind, pull that out? I mean, I just want to know how it all came together. That's all. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he said he's been watching him for a while, but who knows? A good stat for all the Derrick White stands out there, our buddy Landman, good friend of this program and good friend in real life. He tweeted out after the trade yesterday, for what it's worth, per stats over at dunksandthrees.com. I know there are a bunch of these stats, cleaning the glass and so on. Dunksandthrees.com. Derrick White has been the 3rd best defensive player in the NBA this year, and also has had far more of a positive impact on offense than Schroeder and Richardson combined. So should be interesting. We don't know this very comment could be wildly outdated by the time this show goes public, but we don't know as we sit here right now if Derrick White or Daniel Theis or both will be available for tonight's game against the Nuggets. Depends obviously on physicals and all that stuff that needs to go down to, truly finalize the trades. But if they're out there, I guess what I'm saying is this: either way, whether they do play and they're new, it's their first game, not so much for Theis, but for White, or they don't play and they're just unavailable and it's that much shorter a bench. It's a shame. It's unavoidable, but it's a shame that it's like it's been crap team that the Celtics are just, beating the tar off of, and they finally get a really good challenge tonight in the Nuggets and Joker. And I don't think this game is really going to indicate anything.
It could be just like the Suns game where the C's were undermanned and beat the brakes off the Suns.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, even if the Celtics go out and win this game, and hopefully they do, obviously, but even if they go out and win this game, it's still not really going to tell you all that much, because we got to see how Derrick White fits into all this. And based on what you've read, what you've heard, what you've seen, he should fit in seamlessly. It should be an amazing fit. But we don't of all the things that people could be critical of with this trade, whether you believe it's an overpay or whether you whatever, no one's going to say Derrick White's not going to fit this group. Derrick White is going to fit this group incredibly well. I just don't think in the very short term of tonight, we're going to learn a whole hell of a lot. But I'm really, really looking forward to, we got the 4 games before the All-Star break. Obviously, we'll see these guys some, but after the All-Star break, really looking forward to what the stretch run of the season looks like with these guys. And obviously, like we talked about, very, very briefly, what additions, are made from the buyout market and filling out some of these roster spots. Should be interesting, though. Should be a lot of fun.
Are you mad about the picks? How many they gave up?
I mean, I'm not mad.
This has always been
You
the
know,
thing with
it's just
Danny.
after all the, you know, I think I said this off the top of the show, but after all the years of real or perceived pick hoarding in Boston, and then, you know, using those picks on guys who generally have not panned out here because they either weren't good enough or they were underdeveloped or, you know, poor, like it's, you know, I know it hurts people obviously to see, you know, like the Desmond Bain situation or the Matisse Thybulle situation or the, you know, the like Garrison Matthews situation or like some of these guys. But, you know, there have been a lot of Shemi Ojeleyes who, and he was fine, but like Shemi Ojeleyes and Gershon Yabuselis and Carson Edwards and, you know, Romeo Langford, who's gone. And like there have been a lot more of those guys, obviously, than guys that have worked out, be it here or elsewhere. So, you know, ultimately, like the 2028 pick swap scares me a little bit, but I think that, you know, it's I guess that the best way I can say it is, if we are lamenting a 2028 pick swap situation, you know, when that time rolls around in a few years, handful of years, then to me things have gone far worse than you know, ultimately just that pick swap. You know what I mean?
That's why I don't care about it, because if that ends up mattering in 2028, then you screwed up way more than just that. So
like if that, I mean, that pick should be in the 20s if things are going well.
Exactly.
And if it's not,
just swap it, because, you know,
right. And
let's say Antonio,
it's not, you've got a bigger problem.
Right. Exactly. If they switch with you, it's just because either they are doing really well and better than they expect at that particular time, or the Celtics are in a really tough spot. Again, the Brooklyn trade obviously is one that rings, you know, very true if you're a Boston Celtics fan or if you're in the front office, in terms of something to keep in mind. But I have absolutely no problem with the picks that were attached to this, because as we've seen with Boston and we've seen with Brad, picks, these young players, especially on a team like this, like don't really, you know, it would be nice to hit on some of those, but they almost have too many young players. They need to find ways to get like actual vets in there. So some of these aren't even useful. You know, if it ends up things.
Well, I do like that they're, you know, that Brad is, by dealing Richardson, bringing in White, he's forcing Ime's hand to give Aaron Nesmith a little bit of run. Let's see what we've got here in this guy.
Play Pritchard and please play Nesmith in a lineup that actually, you know, isn't a garbage time lineup and that actually matters. Put him out there with Tatum, Brown, you know, Al and Rob or Smart, and like let him play with people that actually know how to play basketball, and just don't put him out there with like Nesmith, Romeo, Cantor, and like Richardson. Like that was the other night. I was like, this isn't do anything for Aaron Nesmith's confidence. Like he's just playing out there with scrubs and jacking up shots because he hasn't shot the ball in a meaningful situation in about a month and a half. And he has to get some sort of run in. So like, that's I hope that this forces the issue a little bit. But I am so over the moon with this trade, and just, you know, a guy here in White that can penetrate, get into the paint, has a nice little floater game, in between game, very confident passing on the inside, you know, dumping it off, or a pocket pass to a big guy rolling, or a guy in the dunker spot. Very, very curious what Derrick White, Rob Williams looks like. That should be wonderful. You know, I think this is exactly what they needed. It's a guy that's very, very, very talented, and I think very underrated. And getting it from the Spurs tree is just a really smart idea, to be honest with you. But couldn't be happier about this. This is great.
But thanks to Ian Thomsen for hopping on with us. We'll do it again next week, and by that time, have an idea what Derrick White looks like in a Celtics uniform. Should be a good time. Thanks again for tuning in. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. iTunes, wherever you're finding us. And for Evan, for Ian, I'm Adam. We'll catch you again soon. Let's see if the C's can make it 7 in a row. Bye-bye.